I was sitting quietly at the table beside my 7-year-old grandson during my son's second wedding. Suddenly, the boy gripped my hand tightly and whispered, "Grandma, I want to leave right now." I frowned a little and asked softly, "What's wrong, sweetheart?" He trembled and replied, "Grandma, you didn't look under the table, did you?" My heart skipped a beat. Slowly, I lowered my gaze and froze. Without saying a word, I took Liam's hand, and we quietly stood up. If you're watching this, thank you for being here. Please like and subscribe to the channel. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to know how far my story of revenge has reached. I was sitting right in the middle of the wedding hall, a grand ballroom glowing with candlelight, beside the boy I love more than life itself. Today was my son Daniel's wedding to his second wife, Vanessa. Liam, my little grandson, was busy pushing his small red toy car across the spotless white tablecloth. His clear, innocent eyes seemed lost in his own world, far away from the laughter and noise of the adults around him. I looked at him, and my heart softened. I gently straightened the tiny bow tie around his neck, a gesture that reminded me of his late mother, Mariah. Every memory of her still felt fresh, her warm smile, her tender voice, her calm nature. Soft jazz music filled the air, blending with the sound of laughter, clinking glasses, and quiet conversations. The hall sparkled with luxury. White roses everywhere, polished silver plates reflecting candlelight, and elegant crystal glasses shining on every table. I looked around, searching for Daniel. He was moving from table to table, raising his glass with a big, bright smile, trying to thank everyone, but I could tell that deep down, he still carried the emptiness Mariah left behind. Vanessa, his new wife, stood across the room posing for pictures. Her beaded wedding gown shimmered under the lights. Her smile was wide and flawless, as if the world revolved around her. Still, something in me felt uneasy. I told myself I was just being overly emotional, but that strange feeling in my chest wouldn't go away. Waiters glided between the tables, serving wine and collecting plates. An elderly couple at our table smiled at me. "How fast Liam is growing. How old is he now, Margaret?" the woman asked warmly. I smiled back. "He just turned 7, I said softly. "Time really flies." I turned to cut a small slice of cake for Liam. He looked up, his eyes shining with gratitude, but quickly went back to playing with his car. It was as if that toy was the only safe place in the room. Then suddenly he stopped. His small hands froze midair. He looked up at me, and for the first time his expression was serious. Too serious for a child his age. A shiver ran down my spine. Before I could ask, he reached for my hand. His fingers were ice cold. In a trembling voice he whispered, "Grandma, I want to leave. Right now." My heart began to pound. I leaned closer and put a hand on his shoulder. "What's wrong, Liam? Tell me what's going on." He pressed his lips tightly together, as if afraid to speak. Then he whispered so faintly I had to lean even closer to hear him. "Grandma, you didn't look under the table, did you?" His words cut through me like a knife. I felt my throat tighten. I forced a shaky smile and ran my hand through his hair. "It's okay, my love. Let Grandma look," I said softly, trying to sound calm even though my heart was racing. I slowly lifted the edge of the white tablecloth and peeked into the dim space beneath the table. The shadows moved as the candlelight flickered. I could see the wooden legs of the chairs and Liam's little shoes dangling. Then, I saw it. A small folded paper, lying right next to Liam's chair. It was so tiny that it almost blended into the darkness. But something about it sent chills through me. Liam pressed himself close to me, clutching my arm. I could feel his breathing quicken. Every tiny tremor of his hand made my stomach twist. I bent down fully and reached for the paper with trembling fingers. All around us, people were laughing, chatting, clinking glasses. But for me, the whole world had gone silent. There was only me, Liam, and that dreadful paper. I unfolded it. The dim candlelight was enough to read the scrawled words. "Table 8, add shrimp to the child serving." Just a few words, but they hit me like a punch to the chest. My blood ran cold. My breath caught. Liam was dangerously allergic to shrimp. Everyone in the family knew that. Even a small bite could take his life. Who would write such a thing? Who could be so heartless to plan this on my son's wedding day? I squeezed Liam's hand tighter, His tiny fingers shook in mine. Without thinking, I stood up abruptly. People turned to stare. The elderly couple beside us looked alarmed. I pulled Liam close to me, holding him as tightly as I could, terrified of losing him. The music and laughter carried on, but around me, everything felt heavy and distant, as if I were underwater. Memories began to flood my mind. Memories of the days when our family used to be whole and happy. There was a time when I believed my son's home would always echo with laughter and love. But life, like a sudden gust of wind, blew that happiness away, leaving behind nothing but pain and scars. I thought of Mariah, my first daughter-in-law. She was like the morning sun shining softly through the curtains. Her smile was warm and her presence gentle. She never shouted, never complained. She had a way of bringing peace into every room. I remembered visiting their little house in the suburbs of Phoenix. The wind would whistle through the trees while Liam, still a toddler, chased a colorful rubber ball across the backyard. Mariah would stand on the porch, holding a basket of fresh vegetables, smiling proudly. "Mom, Margaret, try the chili I made. Tell me what you think," she'd say with that sweet voice. I'd sit there, tasting her food, chatting with her about small things, while little Liam crawled around playing with his old toy car. But the most beautiful and painful memory was the night Liam fell gravely ill. His fever was sky-high. His tiny body burned with heat, and he didn't even have the strength to cry. Mariah held him close, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. "Mom, Margaret, I'm scared," she whispered. I sat beside her, dipping cloths in cool water, gently laying them on his forehead. "Don't worry, sweetheart," I whispered back. "He's strong. He'll pull through." "Don't worry, he's going to be okay," I said softly. But inside, fear sat heavy in my chest like a rock. Mariah and I stayed up all night beside Liam's bed, watching him burn with fever. Finally, as the first rays of morning sunlight slipped through the curtains, the fever broke. Liam's breathing calmed, and he fell asleep in his mother's arms. Mariah turned to me, her eyes red from crying but her lips lifting in a weak smile. "Thank you, Mom. Without you, I don't know what I would have done." I took her hand and squeezed it tightly, silently promising that I would always be there for her and for Liam. I truly believed that this little family would stay happy forever, like a song that never ends. But then one tragic afternoon, everything changed. I was washing dishes in the kitchen when the phone rang. The voice on the other end was cold and official. "Mrs. Carter, we regret to inform you that there has been an accident." I don't even remember how I finished hearing the sentence. My hands shook so badly that I dropped a plate, and it shattered on the floor. Mariah was gone, killed instantly when a truck lost control and crashed into her car on the highway outside the city. I just stood there, frozen, as the world fell apart around me. Her funeral took place on a day of heavy rain. The sky cried with us, the raindrops falling endlessly as if mourning her too. Liam, who was only 4 at the time, sat in my arms looking lost, his big innocent eyes wandering around, not understanding what was happening. "Grandma, where's Mommy?" he asked softly. I hugged him tightly, forcing back my tears. "Your mommy is in a beautiful place now, my love," I whispered. But inside, my heart broke into pieces. Daniel, my son, fell apart in front of the coffin. His shoulders shook, and he couldn't say a word. I knew he was trying to be strong, but his eyes were empty, like a part of his soul had died with Mariah. After that day, Daniel changed completely. He threw himself into work, leaving home before sunrise and coming back long after Liam was asleep. I understood. He was trying to fill that unbearable emptiness inside him with long, endless hours at the office. But little Liam suffered the most. He became quiet, withdrawn. His bright eyes grew sad, as if he was waiting for a miracle to bring his mother back. I became his only comfort. Every morning I took him to school. Every night, I sat by his bed, rocking him to sleep. "Grandma, tell me a story about Mommy," he would whisper. And I always did, with a trembling voice. I told him how Mariah used to sing him lullabies, how she cut his fruit into tiny heart shapes, how she smiled every time he laughed. Each story was my way of keeping her memory alive, for Liam and for myself. Chloe, my adopted daughter, became a big part of those days too. She had such a kind heart and gentle hands. She would visit often, bringing coloring books and homemade cookies. She adored Liam as if he were her own little brother. She'd carry him on her hip, teach him to read, or sit for hours beside him, helping him color his messy little drawings. "Look, Liam, your house looks better than mine," she'd laugh, her voice bright like a bell. But sometimes I noticed the way Chloe looked at Daniel when he came home tired and silent after work. There was something deep in her eyes, something more than sisterly affection. I saw it, but I chose to stay quiet. Maybe I was afraid that if I said anything, I'd break the fragile balance of our wounded little family. Our home wasn't the same anymore. The laughter had faded, but thanks to Chloe and Liam, that small spark of warmth still survived, even if it flickered weakly. I did everything I could to keep it alive. Yet deep down, I knew that both Daniel and I carried scars that time would never heal. Every time I watched Liam sleep, I saw Mariah's face reflected in his, and my heart ached all over again. That memory is still so vivid, as if it happened yesterday. I was sitting in my small living room one afternoon, listening to the sparrows chirping outside, my heart heavy with mixed feelings. Daniel was coming to introduce me to someone, Vanessa. It would be the first time I met her. I tried to prepare myself, to open my heart. I wanted to see this young woman through the eyes of a mother who just wants her son to find happiness again after so much loss. But deep down a chill ran through me, an uneasy feeling I couldn't explain. That day, Daniel arrived later than usual. I was in the kitchen making tacos, Liam's favorite, when I heard the front door open. Daniel came in with a light in his eyes I hadn't seen in years. It was the same look he used to have when he talked about Mariah. That pure joy and excitement. "Mom," he said, leaning on the doorframe, his voice shaky but full of emotion. "I want you to meet someone." I turned off the stove and looked at him, trying to keep my voice steady. "Someone special?" He smiled, the kind of smile I hadn't seen since before the tragedy. "Yes, you're going to like her, Mom." I wiped my hands on my apron and nodded, trying to hide the growing unease in my chest. After Mariah, I never thought anyone could fill that empty space. Not for Daniel, not for Liam, and not for me. That night, Vanessa walked into our lives. She stepped into my home in an elegant light blue dress, her hair curled perfectly around her face, her lips painted a soft shade of red that curved into a graceful smile. "Mrs. Carter, it's such a pleasure to meet you," she said sweetly, tilting her head slightly. I smiled back, invited her in, and poured her a cup of coffee. "Your home is so cozy," Vanessa said, her eyes wandering across the living room walls, stopping at the family photos. One of them showed Mariah holding baby Liam. I thanked her, but I noticed her eyes lingered on that picture longer than I liked. Something about that moment unsettled me. Dinner went by in a calm, polite atmosphere. I laid out everything I had prepared. Tacos wrapped in warm tortillas, a plate of enchiladas with red sauce, and Liam's favorite mango salad. Daniel sat beside Vanessa, his gaze fixed lovingly on her. His happiness was obvious in every smile, every small gesture. "Mom, Vanessa works in the marketing department at my company," he said proudly. "She's amazing at her job." Vanessa smiled and carefully served me an enchilada. "Mrs. Carter, this is delicious," she said warmly. "You'll have to teach me how to make it sometime." I smiled and thanked her, but a quiet uneasiness still tugged at my heart. There was something about her, the way she spoke, the way she smiled, that felt too perfect. As if I were watching someone perform a role they had practiced 100 times. Liam, my grandson, sat at the head of the table, unusually quiet. Normally he wouldn't stop talking about school, but that night he just picked at his food without looking up. He kept avoiding Vanessa's eyes, as if he wanted to hide in a safe corner. Vanessa leaned over, took a chocolate bar from her purse, and set it in front of him with a bright smile. "This is for you, Liam. It's really good," she said in a sweet, coaxing voice. But Liam didn't move. His small hands gripped his fork and knife, and then he turned his face away. I saw fear flash in his eyes, and my heart tightened. Daniel frowned, ready to scold him. "Liam, what's wrong with you? Vanessa gave you candy." I stepped in quickly. "It's nothing. He's probably just tired. Leave him be, son." Daniel sighed, said nothing more, and turned to pour Vanessa more wine, trying to lighten the mood. Chloe, my adopted daughter, was at dinner too. She sat across from me, quiet, but I noticed her face darken when Vanessa took Daniel's hand under the table. Chloe is very sensitive. I know she loves Daniel like a brother, but sometimes I wonder if it's more than that. When Vanessa touched Daniel's hand, Chloe paused, her fingers tightening around her glass. She didn't speak, just lowered her head and kept eating. But that silence felt heavier than words. After dinner, Vanessa insisted on washing the dishes, even though I said no several times. "Mrs. Carter, let me help you rest," she said with overflowing enthusiasm. I finally agreed and watched her roll up her sleeves and hum a cheerful tune while she cleaned. I admit, she did it all perfectly, dishes stacked neatly, the sink shining. For a moment I thought, she seems very caring. Then I went to the living room and saw Liam coloring, his little hand squeezing a crayon. Vanessa sat beside him and praised him. "You draw so well, Liam. What is it? Let me see." Liam instantly let go of the crayon and leaned back, wary as if she were a threat. Vanessa glanced at me and forced a quick smile to cover the awkward moment. "What a shy boy," she said in that same sweet voice. But I noticed something strange flicker in her eyes. Daniel didn't seem to notice anything. He was busy pouring more wine, telling funny stories from work, and laughing loudly whenever Vanessa joked. The evening ended with my son completely satisfied, walking Vanessa to the door, his eyes fixed on her like no one else existed. I stood there watching them leave with a strange heaviness, as if something was off. Time passed, and Vanessa slowly became part of our lives. One weekend morning, bright California sunlight filled the living room while I knitted a scarf. Vanessa appeared, smiling from ear to ear. "Mrs. Carter, I want to take Liam to the park today. Is that okay?" she asked, full of enthusiasm. I looked at Liam on the floor with his wooden blocks, his face blank. "Of course. I'm sure he'd love it," I said, forcing a smile. I still had doubts, but Daniel was at work, and I thought fresh air might help Liam. Vanessa took Liam's hand and led him to the door. I watched them go with a weight in my chest. When they returned, Vanessa came in with a triumphant smile. He had so much fun. He wouldn't stop going down the slide, and he even asked for another ice cream, she said excitedly. But I noticed Liam's shirt, dirty with dried mud on the blue fabric I had ironed that morning. He held his toy car and stayed silent, saying nothing about the outing. "Did you have fun, my boy?" I asked, crouching to stroke his hair. He only gave a small nod and looked away. I wanted to ask more, but Vanessa cut in with her sugary tone. "I already told you, Mrs. Carter, he loved it." I nodded. Yet inside, a small puzzle piece of doubt clicked into place. Another time, while Daniel was at work, Vanessa showed up unannounced. I was in the kitchen making chili when I heard her talking to Liam in the living room. At first she spoke softly, then I heard a harsh line. "Stay still, Liam. Don't make a mess. You're a big boy now, but you still act like a baby." I froze, my hands still over the onion I was chopping. A chill ran through me. When I stepped out, Vanessa instantly changed her tone to sweet again. "Our Liam is so clever. Look at the tall tower he built," she said brightly, pointing at his wooden blocks. Liam pressed his lips together and looked at me like he was asking for help. I forced a smile. "Yes, he's very skilled," I said, but inside unease grew like a thorn. I tried to calm myself. Maybe she's just not used to children. Anyone can be clumsy at first. Liam's 7th birthday is a memory I'll never forget. Chloe spent the whole morning baking his favorite, chocolate cake. When she arrived and set it on the table with the candles lit, Liam shouted with joy. His eyes shone for the first time in months. "Aunt Chloe, this is my favorite cake," he cried, running to hug her. She smiled, stroked his hair, and said tenderly, "I made it for you, my love. Eat a lot." I watched with a warm heart, feeling the family flame flicker back to life. Vanessa was there too, but she only clapped stiffly, standing off to the side with a tired smile. Her only gift was a flat pat on Liam's shoulder and a happy birthday, champ. I saw Liam shrink a little and avoid her gaze, and my heart ached again. I wanted to speak up, but I kept quiet, telling myself not to interfere. Another day, Daniel took Vanessa and Liam to the grocery store. I stayed home, and when they returned, I heard Vanessa complaining sharply. Liam dropped a whole bag of candy at the checkout, and I had to pay for it. What a clumsy boy. Daniel frowned and turned to scold his son. Liam, you're a big boy now. You have to be more careful. Liam lowered his head, hands clasped, and his eyes searched for mine, pleading. I quickly walked over and put a hand on his shoulder. Don't worry, my boy. It was just some candy. But inside I kept asking why Vanessa got angry so easily with a child. Why couldn't she be gentle like Mariah had been? One afternoon, when I picked Liam up from school, his teacher pulled me aside and spoke quietly, concerned. Mrs. Carter, lately Liam talks less and seems very withdrawn. Is something happening at home? I froze but brushed it off. I'm sure it's just the changes, Mrs. Diana. Don't worry. On the way home, Liam tugged my blouse and said in a trembling voice, Grandma, I don't want to go home with Miss Vanessa. I stopped and knelt to meet his clear eyes, my heart squeezing. Why do you say that, my love? Miss Vanessa loves you, I replied. But as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. Liam shook his head, firm and sure. No, Grandma. She doesn't love me. I stroked his hair, trying to calm him, but I couldn't deny he was telling the truth. Chloe, who was nearby, heard everything. She turned away silently, her shoulders shifting as if she had to hold back a sigh. All those little pieces, all those small signs. I had seen them, but I chose to ignore them. Then the day of my son's wedding arrived. That afternoon, Florida's golden sun streamed through the big windows, flooding the ballroom with bright, happy light. I sat at table number 8 with Liam and Chloe. Liam pushed his red toy car gently, whispering a soft vroom vroom. I looked at him and felt my heart fill with tenderness. Chloe, in a simple beige dress, sat on the other side, leaning in now and then to whisper something that made Liam smile. Eat another little piece of bread, my boy, she said, breaking some for him. I smiled, comforted. Even after all our pain, Chloe and Liam were the warm fire of my soul. Daniel, in a navy blue suit, moved from table to table, toasting relatives. His face glowed with happiness. His bright smile seemed to erase the dark years after Mariah's death. I looked at him with pride and sadness mixed together. I wanted to believe he'd found new joy, that Vanessa, shining in her beaded wedding dress, would give him a new home. But every time our eyes met across the room, Vanessa was laughing loudly for the cameras, never letting go of her wine glass. A tiny thorn of doubt dug into my heart. Her smile looked too perfect, like a mask. Soft jazz floated over lively conversations. Waiters moved quietly with trays of appetizers, crispy crackers, warm cheese dip, and plates of fresh shrimp arranged beautifully. I noticed Liam take only a cracker, then carefully push the shrimp away. I frowned and asked in a low voice, Don't you like this, my love? He shook his head and looked away, as if hiding something. I wanted to ask more, but a relative interrupted cheerfully. And Liam is behaving so well, Margaret. Look how big he's gotten. I smiled. He's a smart little man now. But inside I worried. Liam had never refused food so strangely. Across the room, I caught Vanessa watching our table. Her smile tightened for a split second. Then she turned back to her toasts as if nothing happened. I told myself I was overthinking, until everything changed. Liam, still playing, pushed his toy car too hard. It rolled off the table. He crouched to pick it up and froze. His eyes went wide, fixed on something under the table. I leaned in to ask what was wrong. Liam pulled out a small paper folded in 4. His hands trembled. His face went pale. He grabbed my hand and whispered urgently, Grandma, let's go. Please, let's go now. My heart pounded. What's wrong, my boy? I asked, trying to stay calm. But his panic made it impossible. Shaking, he repeated the words that chilled my blood. You didn't look under the table, did you? It felt like a cold knife. I bent down, lifted the white tablecloth, and scanned the dark space. The little paper lay by his chair, harmless looking, but full of threat. I picked it up with shaking hands. The world shrank to just Liam, me, and that awful note. I unfolded it. By candlelight I read the messy words. Table 8, add shrimp to the child's serving. Just a few words, but they jolted through me like electricity. I crumpled the paper without thinking. The music, the laughter, everything around me sank into a dark blur. Vanessa, dazzling in her wedding dress, kept laughing in a corner, raising her glass as if nothing in the world could touch her. Daniel posed for photos with coworkers, smiling like it was the happiest day of his life. But to me, the whole ballroom was a stage, curtains hiding the cruel truth I had just uncovered. I clenched the paper. Liam, the child I loved more than my own life, had almost been trapped in an evil plan on his father's wedding day. I turned to Chloe, sitting beside Liam. She saw my face and her eyes filled with alarm. "Take care of Liam, please," I said, trying to sound steady, though my voice trembled. Chloe nodded, pulled Liam close, and wrapped him in her arms like a shield. "Where are you going?" she asked in a low, anxious voice. I didn't answer. I wasn't even sure what I would do. I hurried into the hallway, my legs feeling heavy like lead, but my heart racing, pushing me to act. Near the bar, a group of waiters were chatting and laughing, such a painful contrast to the storm inside me. I spotted David, the young server who had brought food to our table several times. He had a kind face and a friendly smile, but I couldn't think about that now. I walked straight up to him, held the paper in front of his face, and asked firmly, "Do you know who sent this note?" David looked at it, and his expression changed instantly. His smile vanished into panic. "My God, that's my note," he stammered, hands shaking like he wanted to snatch it away. "A woman gave it to me, and I accidentally dropped it while I was carrying the tray." His words were a small light in the confusion, but they also made my fear spike. "Who gave it to you?" I demanded, almost shouting, losing my composure. David stepped back, confused. "I don't know her name, ma'am. She just told me to give it to the chef. There's no name on it." Rage flared in me like a fire. "All the more reason," I said, stepping closer, my voice shaking with anger and fear. "Listen, my grandson is severely allergic to shrimp. One piece could kill him." David went pale, eyes wide with horror. He shook his head fast. "Ma'am, I didn't know. I just followed the note. I had no idea." The other waiters whispered to each other, worried and curious. I crushed the paper in my fist, feeling it burn my skin. I wanted to scream. I wanted to smash something, but I couldn't. Liam needed me. I had to protect him. From inside the ballroom, the MC cheerfully announced that the main course was coming. The sound felt cruel, a reminder that time was running out and a deadly trap could still be waiting for Liam. I took a deep breath to steady my shaking body. I couldn't stay silent. If I didn't act now, I would never forgive myself. I went back into the ballroom with the note in my hand, proof of a sinister plan. Candlelight still filled the room. Jazz music blended with laughter. Waiters moved quietly with main courses. The smell of roasted meat and gravy filled the air. But to me, it was all a show. I looked at Liam, huddled next to Chloe. His clear eyes were full of fear, fixed on me like I was his only safe place. I took his small hand, feeling his fingers tremble in my palm. Then, driven by something stronger than fear, I stood up sharply and spoke over the music and chatter. "One moment, please. Before we eat, I have something to clarify." The whole ballroom fell silent, as if time stopped. All eyes turned to table 8, to me standing with Liam at my side, Chloe seated with a determined spark in her eyes. Glasses stopped clinking. The murmurs died. All I could hear was my heartbeat. I held up the paper. The messy words were an undeniable accusation. "Who wrote this note asking to add shrimp to the child's plate at table 8? I asked, my voice shaking with outrage but clear and sharp. Whispers rippled across the room. Guests looked at each other, puzzled and confused. I felt Liam's eyes on me, begging me to protect him. Daniel hurried over from another table, his smile fading into concern when he saw my face. "Mom, what's going on?" he asked, stunned. I didn't answer right away. I set the paper on the table and slid it toward him. "Read it," I said, my voice harsh though I was shaking inside. Daniel read it. I watched the color drain from his face, his hands trembling. "What does this mean?" he asked, shocked, looking from me to Liam, searching for sense. Vanessa, dazzling in her wedding dress, came closer, frowning with perfectly staged surprise. "What is this? Some kind of bad joke?" she asked softly, but I saw a flash of panic in her eyes. I stared straight at her, anger and fear gripping my chest. "My grandson is allergic to shrimp," I said, my voice trembling. This isn't a joke. This is attempted murder. My words hit the room like thunder. Silence fell. Jaws dropped. Others began to whisper, eyes darting between me and Vanessa. Vanessa let out a forced laugh, trying to stay composed. Excuse me, Mrs. Carter, but there's no name on that note. Are you really going to believe a story a child found under a table? Her tone turned mocking, trying to make me look like a paranoid old woman. Some guests muttered, uncertain. Maybe it's a misunderstanding. Who would do that at a wedding? My blood boiled. Her nerve left me almost speechless. I wanted to shout. I wanted to tear that wedding dress and rip off her mask. But I had to stay calm. For Liam, for my family. Suddenly, Chloe stood, holding Liam tight, her eyes locked on Vanessa. That's enough, Vanessa. Her voice was cold and pained, like she could no longer keep it in. Chloe stepped forward and slapped her. The crack echoed through the ballroom, sharp and final. Everyone froze, even me. Vanessa grabbed her cheek, eyes wide, then turned to Daniel, sobbing. You see? She's crazy with jealousy. Why is she attacking me? What did I do? Chloe didn't move. Her fists clenched, her voice raw with fury. The only wicked person here is you. You tried to hurt an innocent child on your wedding day. Her words cut through the heavy air. Guests' doubt shifted toward Vanessa. I saw Vanessa freeze, her fake smile fading. Daniel stood still, looking between me, Chloe, and Vanessa like he was trapped between two worlds. Chloe, calm down, he said, voice shaking, but I could tell he wasn't sure who to believe anymore. The murmurs grew louder, pushing all eyes toward me, Vanessa and Liam, shaking in Chloe's arms. Vanessa tried to keep her cool, but her hands trembled. This is slander. Someone planted that note to ruin our wedding, she snapped. Her voice was sharp, but I saw the panic, her perfect mask cracking. I couldn't stand it anymore. Anger flared hot, burning through my patience. I slammed the table, the glasses rattled. That's enough, I said, my voice so cold it silenced even the band. David, come here. The young waiter stepped out from a corner, pale with fear. His eyes darted around like he was trapped between truth and a storm. I showed him the note. Confirm it. Is this the note you received? David nodded quickly, stammering. Yes, ma'am. A woman at another table gave it to me, and I dropped it by accident. He lowered his head, unable to meet my eyes. My blood boiled, but I stayed steady. Everyone was watching. Vanessa jumped in, sharp and desperate. You're mistaken. I don't know anything about that. Before I could respond, a weak, pained voice spoke up. Grace, Vanessa's younger sister, burst into tears and stood. It wasn't Vanessa who gave the note to the waiter, she cried, shaking. She asked me to give it to him. I swear I didn't know what was inside. A wave of shock moved through the room. My God, no. How could this happen? I looked at Grace and felt my heart soften. She was barely 18. Her eyes were red and lost, as if she too had fallen into this nightmare. Vanessa spun toward her sister, face twisted with anger. Shut up, Grace. How dare you lie about your own sister? Her voice was sharp, but her lips trembled. Grace backed away, trembling head to toe. I'm not lying, she sobbed. I just did what you asked. Her words sliced through Vanessa's lies, leaving the whole room stunned. An older relative shook his head, voice tight. To think someone wouldn't spare even a child. In the chaos, Chloe stepped forward, still hugging Liam. If you keep denying it, she said, voice like ice, we can check the ballroom security cameras. We'll know the truth in minutes. Her words dropped like a stone in water. Panic rippled outward. Vanessa's face went ashen. Her lips pressed tight. Her eyes searched for an escape, but there was none. She went silent, and to me, that silence was the clearest confession. Daniel froze, his hand trembling on Liam's shoulder, staring in horror at the woman he'd just married. His voice cracked as if begging for a last shred of hope that this wasn't real. But his eyes, flicking from the paper to Liam, said everything. I watched his heart break, just like mine had when I found that note. An uncle stood, disgusted. Unbelievable. Such evil on a day of joy. His voice shook with anger he could barely hold. After Chloe mentioned the cameras, a deadly quiet took over. Vanessa stood there, pale, lips pressed, hunting for one last excuse. But the truth was out. There was nowhere left to run. Daniel walked toward her slowly, face tight, eyes red. "Vanessa, tell me the truth. Is it true?" His voice trembled, begging for a mistake, a misunderstanding. But deep down he knew. Vanessa stepped back, trying to force a crooked smile. But her eyes screamed panic. "You don't believe me?" she said, voice breaking, clinging to the last drop of his trust. "It's their plan. I did nothing." But her words sounded weak, like a dying wind before a storm. I looked at her, my heart heavy with anger and pain. I had tried to accept her, hoping she'd bring my son happiness. Now she stood before me like a stranger, a danger I hadn't seen. Chloe placed a steady hand on Daniel's shoulder, holding herself together. "Liam almost died because of this woman," she said. The words cut like a blade. "Shut up," Vanessa yelled. "You're just a jealous intruder." Chloe didn't flinch. She shook with anger but stood firm, a shield for Liam. "Jealous? Look this child in the eyes and tell him you didn't try to hurt him." Liam clung to me, squeezing my hand, afraid of being dragged into the nightmare again. Guests began to stand. The party was gone. Mr. Johnson slammed the table. "This is a disgrace. We can't let it slide." Murmurs of support rose like waves, drowning Vanessa in the crowd's contempt. Daniel, torn between love and truth, cried out, voice broken with pain and rage. "Liam is my son. You tried to kill my son on our wedding day." His words stabbed straight into Vanessa's heart. She burst into tears, but I knew they weren't tears of regret, only of being caught. I set the note on the table and said, firm and final, "Anyone who tries to harm my grandson will never set foot in this family again." My words rang out like a sentence. Vanessa looked up with fire in her eyes, but defeat flooded her face. She had lost, not to me, but to the truth. Hotel security approached and, polite but firm, asked Vanessa to leave. "Ma'am, please come with us," one said coolly. Vanessa backed away, searching for help, but no one stood with her. Guests shook their heads, leaving half-empty glasses behind. "Unbelievable," someone whispered. "How can anyone be so cruel?" another said. Daniel stood frozen, hands on his head, as if trying to keep his world from collapsing. Then he slowly knelt before Liam, voice choked. Forgive-me. Forgive me for not protecting you." Tears streamed down his face. My heart split in two. I helped him up, squeezed his shoulders, and said steady and sure, "We stopped it in time. This fake happiness ends here and now." I watched Vanessa being escorted out under a cloud of disgusted looks. In my heart, I knew she never was and never would be part of this family. In the days after that nightmare wedding, our home lived in a quiet storm. Open wounds and unanswered questions everywhere. I felt like I had just woken from a terrible dream where I nearly lost Liam, the child I love more than my own life. The story of the ruined wedding spread, from our small streets to far-off relatives. The house phone wouldn't stop ringing. Some blamed Daniel for trusting Vanessa blindly. Others cried for Liam, the innocent child almost caught in an evil plan. To me, each call was just a painful reminder. Daniel withdrew into himself. He was no longer the glowing man in the navy suit. He drove Liam to and from school in silence, eyes full of pain and guilt. The name Vanessa became a curse we never spoke again. I looked at Daniel with a hurting heart, but I knew he needed time to heal from betrayal. I didn't blame him. Love can blind anyone. Still, our family had to rise from the ashes. I kept caring for Liam like I had since Mariah left. I made his favorites, cheesy pasta, soft pudding, trying to rebuild his sense of safety. But the one who truly healed his soul was Chloe. Every morning, she packed his lunch with care, always avoiding shrimp or anything risky. She even tucked in a little note for the teacher about his allergy, with a smiley face drawn in crayon that he loved. "Aunt Chloe, you draw so well," Liam would say, opening his lunchbox, eyes lighting up like a piece of his innocence had returned. Every afternoon, Chloe took him to the park. I'd watch from a distance as she taught him to fly a kite, showing him how to hold the string so it would soar high. Once he slipped off the slide and she ran to him, brushed the dust from his clothes and whispered, "It's okay, my love. I'm here." Liam's clear laughter rang out, a sound I thought was gone. now a balm to my heart. I looked at Chloe with endless gratitude. She wasn't just a sister to him. She was like a second mother, filling the space Mariah had left. One night, when Liam had a fever, Chloe stayed by his side till morning. Sitting in a chair, laying cool cloths on his forehead, telling him a quiet story about a brave sparrow flying through a storm. I stood at the door silent, and noticed Daniel watching her for a long time. His look was complicated, gratitude, regret, like he was finally seeing something he had missed. I said nothing. I slipped away, giving them space. But in my heart, a small hope lit up. Maybe a light was finally breaking through our family's darkness. Then one evening, during one of our rare dinners together, with the warm pasta I'd made on the table, Liam looked up suddenly. His clear eyes were fixed on Chloe. "I want Aunt Chloe to be my mommy," he said softly but clearly, as if he'd been thinking it for a long time. Everyone at the table went quiet. Chloe blushed, lowered her head, and gripped her spoon to hide her embarrassment. Daniel froze, his eyes tearing up, as if Liam's words had touched something deep inside him. I smiled, rested a hand on Daniel's shoulder, and said gently, "True happiness, son, doesn't come from a shiny wedding dress. It comes from a sincere heart that truly knows how to love." Daniel looked at me, then at Chloe, and I saw a small spark of hope in his eyes. Time passed, and Vanessa vanished from our lives like a toxic wind finally gone. Liam became a happy boy again, always close to Chloe, holding his red toy car and the drawing she made for him. I watched him run and play in the yard. I felt great relief and a sting of pain, thinking about all he had endured. One day, Daniel took Chloe's hand. He stood in front of me in the living room and said, voice shaky but firm, "Mom, I know I made a mistake. I was blind. I put Liam in danger. But this time, I won't let go of the person who has truly stood by our family." Chloe lowered her head, cheeks flushed, but a bright smile touched her lips. I nodded as tears rolled down my face. "Son, all I want is for you and Liam to be happy," I said, my voice breaking. That night, after Liam fell asleep, I sat by the window and watched the silver moon stretch over the quiet street. Its soft light reminded me that even after dark days, light always finds a way through. I whispered, "Family isn't only blood. Sometimes it's chosen, with love and courage." After that grim wedding, a new, brighter chapter truly began for us. I looked out at the yard where the kite Chloe and Liam had flown the day before still rested, and I knew that even if old wounds never fully heal, we would go on, together, with love and strength to carry us. Through all this, I learned something important. In life, there are losses you can't replace and betrayals that break your heart, but sincere love will always light the way. Family isn't built only by blood. It's built by choices and the courage to protect each other from darkness and danger. It's sacrifice and real affection, not false appearances, that bring lasting happiness. Please remember to listen closely, to others and to your heart. Sometimes a small moment of attention can save a life. Kindness is what carries us through nights that feel endless. The story you just heard has changed names and places to protect those involved. We don't share it to judge anyone, but to help someone pause and reflect. How many mothers are suffering in silence in their own homes? If you were in my place, what would you have done? Would you stay silent to keep the peace, or speak up to take back your voice? I want to hear your thoughts, because every story can be a candle that lights someone else's path. Did you enjoy the story? And where are you watching from? Tell me in the comments. Thank you so much for your love. I can't wait to read your comments. On the screen now are 2 more true life stories I recommend. There's so much more on the channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.